Hi, I'm Peter Comeau. I'm Director of Acoustic Design for Wharfedale, and today I'd like to give you a bit of information on how we conceived of Elysian and what's special about this range of loudspeakers. Now, although Wharfedale in later years perhaps became better known for entry-level affordable loudspeaker systems, there have always been high-end models in Wharfedale's product range. If you look back at the history, you'll see products like Airedale, the original Airedale, and later the SFB3, the sound-filled baffle speakers, which were really something that as a teenager I would have loved to have owned, but of course could never afford. And it gives me great pleasure now to introduce Elysian as being something that I regard as affordable high-end. It delivers the performance of extreme high-end speakers, but still within the range of most audiophiles, and I'm very proud of that. But to do that, we had to do a fantastic amount of research. Conceiving of Elysian might have been easy, but actually coming up with the performance in practice was far more difficult. We had to research materials like the glass fiber matrix cones that we use in the bass and mid-range units, together with their low-profile surrounds, and also, of course, the AMT, the air motion transformer treble unit. Now, AMTs, the original idea for this goes back a long way into the 1950s. And I was always in awe of it as a designer because it does something that other treble drive units don't use. Instead of trying to push the air backwards and forwards as a planar diaphragm or a ribbon or a dome does, it uses folds in the diaphragm material in order to squeeze the air out. Now, if you imagine holding a lemon pit between your fingers and applying even a small amount of pressure, the lemon pit will fly out at high velocity. The same sort of thing happens with the AMT, that it's because it can squeeze the air out, the transient performance of this treble unit design is quite incredible. And that means that marrying it to a conventional cone system as we use for the rest of the drivers in Elysian was perhaps a little more difficult than using a conventional dome. In fact, we had to go back to first principles and start studying the exact acoustic performance in order to come up with a crossover that performed a seamless transition between the mid-range and the treble units. In fact, we use an acoustic emulation of the Linkwitz-Riley fourth order crossover scenario in order to achieve this transition, but it's not as straightforward as it would appear on paper. It involved hundreds of hours of listening tests and fine-tuning every single component in the crossover before I was satisfied that we'd achieved a performance where the sound seems to disassociate itself from the loudspeakers and make you realize that there are real performers behind the music. In fact, if you shut your eyes, you could believe that the real performers are in the room with you. The level of detail and the seamless performance of the loudspeakers achieves that in a way that really thrills me to this day. In addition to that, we put a huge amount of work into the cabinet as well, because what we wanted from the cabinet was to make it completely inert so that you only heard the drive units. And to do that, we evolved a multi-layer cabinet, so there are different woods used in multiple layers with damping layers of glue in between that achieve a cabinet where the panel resonance is extremely low, so that you don't hear the cabinet, you only hear the drive units. In addition to that, the bracing inside the cabinet and also the materials that we use for absorbing the rear acoustic wave from the drive units are also carefully graded to make sure that their absorption characteristics mean that the drive units behave in as clean and as low distortion a way as possible. We also wanted to achieve a bass response which was very precise, very controlled, but also went very deep, was very extended, and worked well with the room acoustics. Now, the idea came to me for what we call the SLPP system, the slot-loaded profiled port system, from an idea that Gilbert Briggs, the founder of Wharfedale's, had in some of his early loudspeakers. Instead of using a conventional opening in the baffle or a pipe in the baffle, as is normally used in a bass reflex loudspeaker, he used a series of slots in the rear baffle of the loudspeaker in order to tune it and get very good damping from his bass reflex systems. And I wanted to take that even further, because what that achieves is actually a better integration of the bass tuning of the bass reflex system and the sound that you get in the room. So if you look down the bottom of Elysian, you'll see that there are a series of slots in the base of the speaker, and those slots actually integrate with a typical ported system inside the speaker to distribute the energy in such a way that it marries to the room in a much more efficient way. In fact, the SLPP system achieves a greater efficiency of between 1 and 2 dB over a standard bass reflex port. It also lowers distortion considerably and has the added benefit that it enables the speakers to be placed in the room much more easily. You can simply put the speakers where you want, and then if the bass is too heavy, move them further away from the front wall. If the bass is too light, then move them closer to the front wall. It's very simple to do. Just play some music and end up with a position that sounds right to you. In addition to that, we wanted to make Elysian suitable for a wide range of amplifiers. So they do not have wild swings of electrical phase and impedance. The impedance is fairly constant over the majority of the frequency range, and that makes it easy to drive by any amplifier. So you're free to use the amplifier that you prefer. Obviously, being a high precision, highly detailed loudspeaker, the speakers will respond to an amplifier that's very transparent through to the source. But it means that you can also use valve tube amplifiers if you want, as well as semiconductor amplifiers of any type. Your preference is all that matters when you're choosing an amplifier to go with these speakers. And ultimately, I really hope that you enjoy listening to these loudspeakers as much as I've enjoyed designing them. Thank you.